Welcome, everybody. I am here today with Chris Compston. Chris is a product leader, author, and I had the pleasure of actually seeing him do this sort of a version of this presentation at the Product Lab conference last month. So everyone, today, Chris is going to walk us through what separates product teams that merely survive from those that thrive, even in challenging times. He'll be sharing real-world examples from Farfetch, Bumble, and Reward Gateway, showing how to connect strategic intent to tactical change and build the clarity, culture, and capability needed to deliver lasting business value.
Thanks, Nicole. So I'm going to just start straight away, right? And I think it's something, I'll start with something I think we can probably all agree on, which is no matter what industry that we're in, no matter what role we play within that industry, within that company, success today isn't about delivering more outputs. It's about creating real outcomes. Outcomes for our customers means impact for our business. And that shift from measuring what we deliver to measuring what we achieve is at the heart really of why product thinking has become essential in today's technology world. But here's the challenge. Most organizations, certainly the ones that I work with, but many organizations out there, particularly traditional organizations, were not built to work in this way. They were designed on something that we call the project model, a model defined by hard deadlines, rigid deliverables, and velocity-based output. And while that made sense in the past, it's holding us back in how successful we can be today and will certainly restrict us in how successful we can be in the future. So this is the shift that we need to make from project to product, from something with a finish line to something with an ongoing purpose, from delivering something once to delivering value continuously. I'll just pause there because, Nicole, could you just put yourself on mute because I can just get a bit of feedback? Brilliant, thank you. And now I'm getting no feedback, so I feel like I'm honestly just in my room by myself. But I know there's people here, so I'll continue. And so this is the shift that we need to make from project to product. This shift will help us to build products that customers really love. It helps us to be innovators in the market. It turns our uncertainty into opportunity. It future-proofs the business. And really this shift, it's not optional for those who want to be leaders, those organizations that want to be market leaders. So the question is for the people that are on today, and I want you to think about this throughout this call, but also when you go back into the companies that you work for, which of these two models is your organization living in today? And which do you want to live in tomorrow? Because I think the answer should really be quite obvious. But if this was as simple as choosing, then every company would work this way already. The reality is that making the shift is really hard. And it's hard for a number of reasons, right? It's hard because even though we are hugely encouraged to work in this way, there are books out there, there are podcasts, there are these live sessions on LinkedIn. Even AI will encourage you to work in this way. I've just come from Productize in Lisbon and even Product Lab in Berlin. Every talk that I saw was helping and encouraging people to shift to a product thinking mindset at the heart, at the core of what they were talking about. But there is actually quite a distinct lack of really actionable guidance in the context of everybody's organization. What can you do today to make this change? And that's partly why it's hard. Another reason why it's hard is we are in really tough economic times. It feels like, honestly, in a 20-year career, I think I probably said this 20 times, but the economy is really hard right now. We have multiple global wars happening. We've got geopolitical instability. There's huge tech layoffs, and the AI revolution essentially means everybody is expected to do a lot more with a lot less. And it's also hard, as I just touched upon, because most organizations were not built and designed to work this way. They were built and designed for certainty. If you think of organizations in the manufacturing sector, automotive sector, traditional retail, these businesses were built with an understanding that if they deliver things, they will make revenue. And in those types of organizations, and why it's hard to be a product organization, is that really efficiency gains are the only lever that you can pull to differentiate between yourself and your competitors. And it's hard, and we're not alone in this either. Some stats that I was researching a couple of months prior to our talk in Berlin, which is where I met Nicole. 2% of organizations that were surveyed have operationalized a product operating model at scale. So not just in pockets, not just in one or two teams, not in just an innovation team or an exemplar team. Across their organization, however big that is, only 2% have actually implemented a product operating model at scale, and it's doing well for them. That leaves a huge 98% that are still along that journey, from right at the beginning where they're still understanding what product thinking is and how to operate in that way, to struggling through to actually implement this kind of model. Of that 98%, 7%, again, a huge number of organizations have faced significant implementation challenges. That could be challenges of leadership, financials, technology, scope, timing, people's capability. So it is really, really challenging. And I think these stats prove that to be the case. It's really hard, and I know it's hard. I joined Farfetch a number of years ago in essentially what was my first operational role, at least my first role focused on how product development organizations were working. And I was working very closely with our VP of product, Angela, and our VP of product design, Justin, two really outstanding product thinkers. They had the vision. They wanted to transform Farfetch, which was 10,000 employees at the time, huge organization. They wanted to transform Farfetch into a product company, into a product thinking company. So the area of the business that we were working in, the product was a few thousand people. We had a vision and we have the ambition to change that into a product company. I joined along with a number of other product operations people, and we were given the remit to make this change happen. And we came along with all the different tactics, ideas, behavior change that we wanted to implement based on that ambition to help that change to take hold and to become a product company. I mean, it's not too surprising now as I look back, but everything that we tried to put in place essentially bombed. It definitely took between 3 and 4 times longer to put even the most basic things in place. And the reality was that a year later, we were probably no more product led than we had been when we started this project. I know it's hard. It is really hard to make this kind of shift. But the reason I am giving this talk is I want to introduce you to an approach that I now take with my clients to help them to become part of the 2% and not part of this 98%, 97% with the significant implementation challenges. That starts off with the connection between strategic intent and tactical change. It's fantastic that our leaders have strong vision of becoming a product company. It's fantastic that our people on the ground are making changes, but we do not connect those two things, then change is really hard to measure, to understand, and to show progress in. I'll give you a very, very quick example. One of my colleagues, another consultant, was working at one of the UK's largest, if not one of the world's largest financial institutions. They're simply a delivery factory, just creating features, pushing them out the door. They had a new CTO join, and they said, "We are now a fintech. We are now a fintech." Fantastic vision, fantastic ambition. They are still not a fintech. I think that's like 3 years later. They are not a fintech because even though they had that ambition and vision, they were struggling very much to connect any of the changes that teams on the ground. We're talking of thousands of people trying to make change because of that lack of connection. How are we actually going to achieve this change? And that's the main issue here, right? It's not the lack of action or the lack of effort by the teams. It's just simply the bridge between them. So if you look at this diagram here, you have strategic intent right at the top, the ambition to be a product organization, or even in that example, a fintech. And then you have tactical change. This is the change that on the ground you expect your teams, your people, your mid-level leaders in the organization to make happen. And you can already see here there's a huge gap between these two things. This missing link here is the connecting point, that bridge between them. And in the middle there is what I call organizational capabilities. This is not individual capabilities, although important. This is not team capabilities, although important. It's the capability of your organization to be a product organization. And I link this back to, it's great that I'm sat down today because I think this analogy will be even funnier. I link this back to years ago when I think like many of us and probably a lot of people on the call today have a vision of maybe losing a bit of weight, gaining a bit of muscle. They go to the gym, right? I have the strategic intent, the vision of losing weight, getting muscle, and I start to put changes into place. I run on the treadmill for 10 minutes. I go and sit on the exercise bike for maybe a bit longer, 20 minutes, because it kind of feels like you're sitting down anyway. Honestly, after a few months of doing that, there is very little change to the body because I've not quite understood the different types of fitness I need to improve and the muscle groups that I need to build. Organizational capabilities in the middle are a bit like your muscle groups. You have to focus in on them. You have to build that muscle to improve your muscle groups, but also to improve your organizational capabilities. To put that into perspective, I think an organization, all the organizational capabilities I think that an org needs to become a product organization. We have the strategic intent, the vision of being that product org. It means that we have to have principles of being strategically aligned, value-driven, outcome-focused, and financially impactful. Each and every one of these muscles, these muscle groups, has to be built upon, has to be practiced, has to be improved and optimized. I know this is a slightly overwhelming slide, and particularly when I do this at conferences, there's lots of people taking photographs of this slide because it's one you certainly have to remember. Number one, it should feel overwhelming. This work is hard. You have to do the hard work in understanding these and improving them. The second point I'll make is I will be sharing out these slides, an extended version of them, so you don't have to take screen grabs. You will get the slides after. Just to put that into some perspective, this is a real world example back from Farfetch again. When I joined, Justin and Angela had this principle of becoming outcome focused. And I went in place and put in something that I called starting conditions. This is the tactical change I wanted to see to help us become outcome focused. Starting conditions is a series of questions, only 5, that move a team from simply going through a Jira backlog into a team that thinks about outcomes for customers. They're very simple questions, things like, what is a customer problem? How might we try and solve it? How will we know based on behavior change if it's being solved or not? Questions like this. And if you connect with me and ask me later, I'll send you the full list of questions. This is a very simple change, a very basic change. And when we first introduced it, it was really hard to get the 15 product teams we were working with to even answer these questions. And the reason was because of that missing link. They agreed they wanted to be outcome focused. They understood what those questions were and why we should be asking them, but they didn't quite get that it was iterative learning was the capability we were looking to improve. And it's only when we'd actually defined that and shared that with the teams that they could connect starting conditions with the other 10 or 20 things we were asking them to do, and could focus in and say, this is why we're doing it. We're improving our iterative learning capability. Because most teams I've worked with understand that learning iteratively by launching something, seeing what happens in the market, and then building upon it is a good thing to do, but they often struggle to make that happen. So when we realized that this was a capability we wanted to increase and improve, then starting conditions start to become part of the way that we did work as a forcing function to stop the teams to think about why they were doing things to help us to be outcome focused. So that's the first part, connecting strategic intent to tactical change. The second part is balancing resources and incentives. And this is where your middle level product leadership will come in, like your heads of product, some cases directors of product, that have been part of shaping that strategic intent, but also have to lead and manage teams and people. So the point here with resources and incentives is if you lack either of them, you end up with something negative. So if you lack resources, you can certainly expect resistance. If you don't give the teams resources to do this type of work, they won't be able to do it. But if you lack incentives, you expect resentment. I'm going to tell you an analogy because it's, I think it helps to understand this, because this isn't just a business thing, a tech thing. It happens in the real world as well. When I first met my partner around 7 years ago, we had decided as a group of some colleagues to do a hiking challenge. The hiking challenge was called the 3 Peaks Challenge in West Yorkshire, where I'm originally from. 3 peaks means climbing 3 mountains, right? Just to be clear. And there was a 12-hour time limit. You had to do the challenge within 12 hours. I was highly incentivized. We managed to gather a lot of donations for a charity we really cared about. So great incentivization to do something that's hard work. But equally, I was incentivized because if you managed to do this within 12 hours, we were promised that there was a pub at the end and they would offer us free beer. Now, probably Nicole knows, but anyone else that's on the call knows me. I'm very highly motivated by free things, particularly alcohol. So this was a really good incentivization for me to do this challenge, right? But the problem was I totally lacked any resources. where my partner had done a lot of exercise, understood nutrition, and had the right equipment. I had the wrong boots, the wrong waterproof equipment, hardly any water, the wrong kind of food, no painkillers. Surprise, surprise, she managed to do it in 8 hours. She got to the pub, she got the free beer. I am not joking. I did it in 11 hours and 58 minutes on the dot. The pub was closed. There was no beer for me. I got the train home alone. I think you can even tell now, this is 7 or 8 years later, the level of resentment that is still there because you need both. You need to give your teams incentives on resources to make change happen. This is what it looks like. When you have resources, you need to give teams time and space, time away from product delivery and development onto organizational evolution to become that product company. You need the right people with the right types of capabilities, and you need budget, both direct and indirect. What do I mean by that? Direct budget is we need money for possibly to get new training programs or to hiring product coaches. Indirect budget, can we take people away from product development and revenue generation onto org evolution for a longer term play? And you need those incentives, right? You want your people to be motivated by growth opportunities, by working with different people across the organization, and in many cases, some quite senior leaders. You want them to gain recognition for the type of work that they're doing, and you need to be able to reward them in some way, whether it's bonuses or role and grade change, or it's simply extra learning and development budget, or honestly, holiday days, annual leave days. If you can say to people you'll get an extra day annual leave by doing this type of work, you'll be surprised at how many people are incentivized in that way. So when we were doing this at Bumble, we had all of our resources in place. Leadership had found the time and space for people away from product delivery. We had certainly had the right people and capabilities in there, and we had some budget we could play around with. And we did have incentives, but we were not good at communicating those incentives. So for the first few months, org evolution wasn't really happening. And then we became a lot clearer on the incentives. The growth opportunities of working with the highest level of leadership, in some cases, the founder of the Bumble, was a great opportunity for people to grow and to learn. We were putting them on the all hands stage, the company all hands stage, where everybody joined every single month. We were putting them there to describe the types of work that they were doing to a broad audience to get that recognition. And finally, we were able to link organizational evolution to product leads or the leads of these groups, OKRs. So at the end of the year, they could show progress in capability of themselves and of the organization. They can then link that to potential grade change or salary increases. So that's the second part, balancing resources and incentives. The third and final part is often the most forgotten one because it's great to connect strategic intent to change and balancing resources and incentives, but long-term commitment has to be cultivated. If you want long-term sustainable change, it has to be cultivated within rather than being dictated from down. Because short-term commitment is dictated. You can get people to do things as a leader by dictating it. And there's definitely an argument in some cases where you can and maybe should be the benevolent dictator, meaning that you have a much broader perspective. You know good things can happen, so you just have to dictate change. But if you want long-term sustainable change, it has to be cultivated from within the teams. So this is what this looks like. And I'm sure, again, we've been in many of these organizations where leadership essentially just dictates something to a team. If leadership dictate to a team, we want you to improve how data informed we are as an organization, the product team will take that and only improve their one team because they are not empowered to look across the organization. Whereas if a leader in the org says, we have these set of organizational capabilities we want to improve, we want to give you, the team, something to focus on, go and solve that yourself, you'll have much broader impact. You can see here that the icons in the middle, this is a cross-functional group, right? These are the ones you have to take away from product development. If you want organizational evolution to happen from a broader impact across the org, you need to form operational working groups from people in those product development teams. Take people away from product delivery into this operational working group. They have to be cross-functional because you want a diverse mix of perspectives. So not just product managers, please. You have to include engineers, designers. Why not include people from finance, marketing, sales, legal and compliance? If you're talking about org change, everyone has to be involved in that. So pick the right people. It should also be cross-seniority level in some cases. As I mentioned when I showed the larger set of organizational capabilities, one of the principles is to be financially impactful. You don't want to staff that with people with less experience because that's a big change that has to be made. You have to probably get a product director in there as well. And finally, you have to be cross team. Don't just take one product team and give them a capability to improve. Make it a mix of people from every single team. I talk a lot about this cultivation of change because, again, it doesn't just happen in tech and business. Um, I used to play five-a-side football, honestly, when I was a lot younger, and I was terrible. The team was terrible. We were in a terrible league. We were often always at the bottom, to be honest, often losing by double-digit numbers. And very often we would get a new team member in who was really good, and they would do this part. They would dictate to us how to improve, what tactics, what strategies. They did not last long in the team. Did we change anything? No. Did we actually get any better at anything? No. We were still in that same terrible league. Until one year, I was about 30 at this point, right? And a team of 12 to 15-year-old schoolboys joined the league. They ran circles around everyone, and it wasn't just a fitness thing. They were just incredibly good at playing football. They stormed the league. They beat every single team, and they went up. I can tell you now that the next year, the next season, every single one of those terrible teams had improved simply because they were being exposed to um, uh, really good tactical behaviors and strategies. They were just really highly capable. And we improved ourselves simply by being around them. And that's how you cultivate that change, because there is a new group of people showing you a different way. So this is a full picture, right? You need to connect strategic intent to tactical change, not just having the ambition and the effort, but understanding how to show progress. And you also have to balance your resources and incentives, because no one will do anything without either of them. And finally, you have to cultivate the long-term commitment to change, building operational working groups, cross-functional, cross-level, cross-team, to make that change happen. Everything I've spoken about here today will be coming in a book next year with my co-authors Ezra Yetish and Hugo Froisch, who both speak about this content as well. That'll give you all the principles, the capabilities, and also activities that you need to make this shift happen. I said at the top of the call, for those that didn't join, one of the hardest things when you're trying to make this shift is a lack of actionable guidance. Well, here you have it. This is the actionable guidance you'll be looking for. This is a book of action. If you sign up today using that QR code, later today, I will send you an extended version of these slides with more content, more examples, and we'll also be sharing you early access book updates as well. Thank you for the time. I think I'm around just about on time. Thank you to Nicole, Jonas, and the team at UX Camp. Honestly, their product is fantastic. So for anyone on the call who hasn't checked it out, take a look, because it solves a lot of the challenges that I've been talking about today, particularly iterative learning, data-informed, customer-focused, those organizational capabilities. My name is Chris Compston. I'm the founder of a consultancy that builds great product operating models so that you can build great products. I have consulting and advisory services. I also do leadership development coaching for those aspiring leaders, and I do training as well. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn or go to my website, chriscompston.com. And again, thank you to the UX Camp team.
Chris, thank you also for offering these slides as well. So, because I know folks have a lot of questions, and I can see some questions are going to start to come in. So please ask away. One thing I really am curious about, and when you're trying to say to, your C-suite or directors and above, hey, I have an idea, or I think that this might work better. We know a lot of this direction comes from the top down. You've talked a lot about psychological safety in other talks as well. So I'm a product manager. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Nobody's talking to anybody on my teams. I don't even know where to begin. How can I even start?
Yeah, so I think this is a question we get quite a lot when sharing this type of content, right? Because there is a lot of people in teams that believe and know that product in inverted commas could be done in a better way. You want to be outcome focused, you want to be value driven. We want to do like more rolling planning than big upfront financial year planning. The reality is, if you are a product manager in a team, in a large enough organization, by that I mean, I don't know, 4 product teams plus, you are not going to be changing the organization. Okay. You're just not in that right level until you become a CPO. God forbid if you want to ever get to that level, then you'll be in charge of changing the organization. The position you're in, you are not going to be doing that. But what you can do is make your world way, way better. You can make your world way better by, and do you know what? I'm going to flip back to those organizational capabilities because we can just talk through some of them. You can make your world better by starting to understand your level of capability just in your team at any one of these 16 things. And if you start to realize, just as an example, let's take a look. If you start to realize that, we really struggle to measure our impact, we don't talk to customers that much to get feedback loops. To be honest, we don't quite have the growth mindset because we just don't have the time for continuous improvement. And our iterative learning capabilities aren't strong enough because our stakeholders just want us to deliver, deliver, deliver. We know that we're struggling with being outcome focused. Straight away, you've now got a more holistic picture for your team, at least, of the challenges that you're faced with. It's now up to you, because it certainly isn't going to be me coming in and telling you what to do. It's up to you to understand within your context, what can we change? Now, with iterative learning, like I said, we had starting conditions, those 5 questions at the beginning of every project or every initiative that we're picking up. We have to answer them, and we use it as a forcing function. And the moment that you have to force your team, and I mean the whole team, engineers, designers, data, whoever's in that team building the product, forcing them into answering those questions, it doesn't actually take long to start to become more outcome focused and helps with iterative learning. The key to that is involving stakeholders. If you're in the type of organization that has really strong stakeholders, involve them in the creation when you feel comfortable in the creation of the starting conditions. They will then start to think more outcome focused. The moment that happens, you get more leeway to be more iterative in your learning. So when you launch things, you leave it out for a number of weeks, a month, learn from it, and then build upon it. And you bring the stakeholders in on that journey, it makes huge changes. The reason I'm saying that you should start in your team and start with these in inverted commas small things, because that's still quite hard to do, I have to say. The reason I say that is because it's starting to show value, right? So if you do that for a whole quarter, and whatever business impact you're measuring, whether it's cost reduction or revenue generation, if you can go back to your product leaders and say, well, for a quarter, we changed things and we started asking these questions and we got stakeholders involved. And look, our revenue went up in this team. It's a really great way to motivate your leaders into going, wait a minute, if all 5 teams did this, maybe all 5 teams will increase their revenue generation or whatever metric it is you're measuring. And at that point, maybe your product director starts to go, oh, wait a minute, I'm starting to look really good because my teams are doing these things. So when you're product manager in teams, starting small by focusing on the things you can change can have bigger impact, but it will take a while.
Thank you. The questions are rolling in now. I'm just so happy that we've got so many folks that were able to come over. First one is from Prem. Let's say you're working directly with a founder. How can you effectively put across your product related ideas or opinions without being seen as inferior?
So founders are an interesting breed, right? I mean, I sort of know because I founded my own business, and we're all a little bit crazy, to be honest, because the things that we create are ours and we really care about them. Anyone that does have a question today, and if you don't feel like I've answered it fully, just connect with me on LinkedIn. We can chat through this further as well. I don't have the context of your organization, the size or the scale of it. If it sounds like it's maybe sort of small size, you really need to understand what they're motivated by. Because anything that you put forward as a product idea, even if you feel like you've prioritized it against all the other ideas really well, if it doesn't link to something they're motivated by and what they are trying to achieve, it's always going to be a real struggle. I say this in a lot of the talks that I give and in the questions I answer. Business leaders, including founders, they only care about 5 things: making money, reducing costs, acquiring new customers, engaging existing customers, or, and maybe in the case here, shareholder investor value. The moment you can figure out which of those 5 things it is, try to align your product decisions with one of those 5 things, the one that they care about the most, and you'll probably have more luck. On that last one, shareholder investor value, you need to check out a workshop that a person called Simonetta Batiga does on understanding the cost of teams, return on investment, and how small changes in those financial models changes shareholder investor value dramatically. again, if you can figure out the financial side of it, you're way more, there's way more opportunity to, yeah, convince them that your direction is the right one. I joked about this in Berlin as well. There is probably some book that needs to be written out there that's simply called How to Convince Leadership. Kind of like I answered with the first question, convincing leadership is the hardest thing to do. You need, and it's a mixture of the first two questions and the answers to those. You need to understand what they're motivated by and why they want to work in a project way. Why did they believe that hard deadlines are the best way to work with rigid deliverables, velocity-based output? You need to go speak to them. I don't know who they are, but if you go speak to them and find out why that might be, a lot of the time, and the reason I left this slide on, a lot of the time, it comes down to the funding model. So, as if we think about just the product organization, because I'm not talking about changing the whole org, right? Again, Farfetch was 10,000 people. I worked at Metro in Germany. There are 80 to 100,000 people. As an individual, I'm certainly not going to change that whole organization. The product org is a thing that we're talking about. The leaders in the product org, whoever your most senior product or tech leader is, they have budget and they will apportion that budget to increasing resources, people, teams, tools in certain areas. A lot of the time, and actually I was chatting to an old friend of mine called Louise Barton, again, check her out on LinkedIn. Finance isn't involved in this conversation. And you would expect, sometimes people expect that what finance want is a whole year roadmap plan of every single feature that's going to be delivered and the revenue associated to it. A lot of the time, they don't actually want that. They want broad strokes of, do we think we're going to hit our targets? They don't want to know what's been delivered in every single sprint, in every single quarter even. Speak to your financial partners if you have access to them, depending on what level in the org you are, because that's a huge help. But it is the leaders have to change the funding model to be more of a rolling funding model. Every quarter, I'm going to give this team $250,000. I expect you to return that investment. What are you going to do to build it? If you can change that funding model, everything else here that's on the screen becomes way, way, way easier. This is actually how you get an empowered team, by funding them in a very, very different way. Again, as a product manager, product designer, an engineer in a team, you are not going to be making those changes. It is almost impossible. But what you can do is speak to leadership by showing the value I talked about in the answer to the first question. Experiment, show value, go back to leadership and say, we've been doing things slightly differently. Can you help us to do more of it? And again, connect back to business impact. If you can say every single quarter, we made revenue because of the things we did were different, your leaders are going to be convinced. I'll be honest, people are convinced by money.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I really was part of that. Sometimes I remember working for a CMO once, and they wanted a year's worth of social posts up front, and it's like, okay, yeah,
And the answer to that is, yeah, I'm going to do them every month. I mean, well, what can you possibly know? I mean, things are happening, things are changing on a weekly basis in tech. You just
absolutely.
can't know everything up front. But what, as a team, what you can do is, we always used to say, I used to work at a consultancy called ThoughtWorks, so really strong on like agile thinking. You can definitely start saying, this quarter, we are going to do these things. As a product manager, you have to know what you're doing next quarter. The quarter after that, we might do these things. The third quarter, you know what? This is a potential thing we might do. The fourth quarter, who knows? But we hope to make some money.
That's going to be a clip that I'm gonna use for. So here's one from Magda. At my company, we have a product department, but it's often a challenge to align the different disciplines: UX, design, product ownership. What would your advice be on how to strengthen collaboration and better align roadmaps when working on a product together?
I think this, again, because I don't know the context, again, if you want to talk more after, we can do. This sounds like that maybe each of those functions has a different roadmap, potentially. I think it's been well spoken about that cross-functional teams with the same goal are the teams that are going to be more successful. You want different perspectives from different angles. You want to be all focused on the same challenge. If, for example, your product designer spends 50% of time with you and 50% on, I don't know, the component library and designing things for that, they've got a different alignment, and they're going to have different people requiring them to focus on each part of that. You might have like a product design lead talking about component library. You might have your CPO going, why aren't we working on the product? It has to be a conjoined effort. You have to have the same goals. That's why I don't think OKRs that are specific to a function particularly work, because you're going in different directions and pulling against each other every time. And so I think that would be the first thing. Have one roadmap for the product and cross-functionally work on it and have everyone inputting into it. There's definitely times, like particularly in engineering, where an engineering lead or manager might have a goal, an OKR to, I don't know, to improve continuous deployment across the org. That's absolutely fine. That's still like operational work. It's org evolution work. So they are going to be away from the team for some amount of time. But what we're talking about is the people building the products on a day-to-day basis. They have to have the same goals. When we talk about, as you can see here, like strategically aligned, the first thing is here is ultimate clarity. So what does that mean? Ultimate clarity is that everybody knows what the product vision is, the product principles, the strategy, the goals, how we're measuring things, so much that they can just repeat it straight away without having to go and find a slide deck somewhere. They should know their team goals, that what their team's working on all the time. That's what ultimate clarity really means. It means planning in a certain way. It means communications. It means documentation, product marketing, internal and external. So everyone knows what they're doing. But to be honest, to answer that question, like to top it off, it's have all the same goals, have the same roadmap. That forces alignment to happen.
What is the ideal time for converting an idea to a product and shipping it? Great question.
3 days. I mean, this is super contextual to every single org, right? I think Booking.com always comes up as one of these examples. I'm not entirely sure they still operate in this way, but a number of years ago, they could ship like 100 experiments in a day across their teams, right? Build, gone, build, gone. The actual answer to this question from an operational perspective is you need all the structures in place to go from idea to product shipping as efficiently as you can. Now, what does efficient really mean, right? It means that we have everything on hand, the processes, the tools, the people to get things to market. It means actually we achieve all of our outcomes with minimal effort. It's funny because I did a talk at, again, that financial institution I mentioned before, and I did it to a group of leaders, and I said, if your people can continually meet their goals, their outcomes with minimal effort, that's a good place to be. And it sounds really scary, right? Like, oh, put minimal effort in and reach your goals. But that's not the point. That's efficiency. So to answer this question, you need all the structures, the processes in place to ship quickly. What does that mean? You need things like continuous integration, continuous deployment from an engineering perspective. Now, I used to have a conversation with a good friend of mine who was a product director, one of my first ever clients. And I said, you need to care about CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. It's you that has to care about that. The engineers will want to do that anyway, because that's like the modern way of software development, right? But as a product person, it's you that has to care, because it's you that is going to make the decisions that you want to market as fast as possible. And that's the way to do it. When a team can work independently of the main, code base and everyone else and get things out quickly, it immediately makes you more experimental. It immediately allows you to be more iterative because you can roll things back very quickly. So to answer that question, it's all about structures, practices, and processes. It's not about the time. Company A over there might be able to do it in an hour. Company B over here might take them 3 weeks. But they're building completely different products. They're a completely different team with a different set of capabilities in a different industry. So you can't just come up with like one single time for that.
Absolutely. Okay, more questions are rolling in, but just one more, and let's go here. Oops, not this one.
I can answer that one later.
That's
Whoever
what
it
I
is.
thought. I was gonna send that one to you after, Chris. So
Yeah, I can do
you're
that one.
reading my mind. I'll keep reading it for you. As a UX designer at a smaller company, I often receive last-minute feedback or change requests from superiors. We can all relate to this. Sometimes just before the product goes live. These changes can significantly alter the overall flow and direction of the project. How do you usually handle such situations? This will like everybody can relate to this one.
So this is about negotiation and influencing skills, right? And I coach people in this. And I say to my coaches, like, what do you think influencing means? Influencing is simply the ability to get people to go in the direction that you think is the right way to go. Like, that's just all that influencing is, to get down to like the real foundational level of that. So what you need to be able to do is influence those stakeholders, those leaders, those senior people to continue to go down the route that you think is the right one. So how do you do that? Use data and be incredibly objective. Never take a subjective standpoint. Never go, I don't think that will work. Say, well, I've understood what you were talking about here, but the data shows that we should go in this direction. Very, very hard for people to disagree with the data, right? That's the first thing. Number two is sometimes leaders are going to do this, and you just have to get on board. It's just the reality of the world and hierarchical structures. I said at the top of this call as well that there's a thing called the benevolent dictator. Sometimes leaders do have more perspective than you across the org, right? And there may be, for example, when I was working at Bumble, you'd come to like the end of the third quarter, and if revenue targets hadn't been met, drop everything, only do the short-term things that we think are right for the business. How do we generate as much revenue in that final quarter to meet those targets? As a UX designer in a team, it feels awful. I've been there, trust me, years ago, that's what I did, and it felt awful. But sometimes they just know something that you don't know. So it is upon you to go and ask them, is there something I don't know about that's happening here, just so I can prepare for next time? And that's absolutely fine. And you might have to go and speak to someone in finance or marketing or sales to understand what's different, what is different. So I think firstly, work on your influencing skills, try and negotiate them with them. I always used to say, like, pick the hill you really want to die on, right? There will be small changes that come in. And actually, if they're not the ones that you want to, die on that hill for, you should be negotiating the hardest for those. The reason I say that is negotiate as hard as possible and then concede. Let the leader win that one, because when it comes along and it is the hill you want to die on, they've already done you a favor. Or you've already done them a favor, so they should be a little bit more influenced to take the thing that you want to do. There's no easy answer to that, unfortunately.
But that's really a great answer, actually, negotiation.
No easy answers, only great answers.
Absolutely. Chris, this has been another inspiring session for me as well. And I really want to thank you for stepping in and handling our LinkedIn Live. We were talking about LinkedIn has its own set of rules, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does. But this is being recorded, right? So we can share this video out.
So we'll get the recording up really fast for everybody. And to anybody that wants to connect with Chris, we have all the details. I'll have everything up on LinkedIn. We'll get the slides to you as well. And to any questions we didn't answer, thank you, Chris, for offering to take those for us as well. So thank you, everyone. And Chris, enjoy the rest of your day. And everyone else, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.